Welcome to WP-Tonic episode 151. Today we've got Josh Pollock of Caldera Forms and Caldera Labs. Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Josh Pollock. I am the founder, lead developer for Caldera Labs. We make Caldera Forms and other things with the word Caldera attached. When I'm done with this, John's going to say Caldera 3 times fast to impress us with his skills. So it's a drag and drop responsive form builder for WordPress that, it's responsive by design, and that's kind of my main focus. I do a lot of other types of plugin development and REST API stuff, teach. I like the WordPress.
Definitely. We all like the WordPress. I also want to introduce my co-host, Jonathan. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hi there, folks. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a maintenance service company. We also provide services for graphic designers, other agencies that are looking for a trusted partner in the WordPress space.
Very good. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design, and I help blue-collar businesses with their WordPress sites, specifically their local SEO and their WooCommerce shops. So diving right in, how did you first get involved in web development, Josh? What's your origin story?
I started writing a blog about being a nerd. And I think it might have originally been on Blogger, and that was terrible, so I switched to WordPress.com. And I got way more into playing with the blog than writing on the blog. Which meant that, you Google how to do X with WordPress, and they're like, yeah, you could do that, but you can't on WordPress.com, sad. So that's how I got into hosting my own site and breaking it regularly. And by breaking it, I mean going through the learning experience of teaching myself PHP development. And yeah, it kind of got carried away from there. I made some themes, which was a great learning experience, but I should never make a theme. I don't know how to make something look good. So I got into plugin development, which led to me working at Pods, which is a great learning experience. And from there, moved on to starting my own thing with Caldera.
Can I ask a question, Josh? Did you have any kind of previous coding experience before?
So when I was in high school, I did a self-taught web design thing where I got this one of those O'Reilly books on web design. And after HTML, I got annoyed and stopped. So I knew HTML as of 1998 going into this, and none of that CSS stuff. I feel it had a section on what would have been server-side scripting in 1998, CGI.
HTML.
Yeah, was CGI bin or something.
Yeah.
Maybe Java applets. Yeah, I didn't read that part of the book.
Most people didn't actually, Josh. Be flippant. I'm sorry.
So yeah, before I started just experimenting with WordPress, let's call that 2011, 2012, I definitely had made websites on AngelFire or GeoCities or just hacking together some HTML, but that was about it.
Thanks. I thought it would be just interesting for the audience to see what your experience beforehand was.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's a question too, how many people actually that are successful WordPress entrepreneurs actually have a computer science degree as opposed to people who
I often wish I understood the theory a lot better. I'll have these discussions about code performance where I'll talk about things, and at some point I'll be I'll get pretty deep, and then I'll say something I don't know, and then at that point it's opcodes, or I don't know, I have a liberal arts degree.
Nice.
That's where it trails off into
It's probably for the best, Josh. You could go into a very dark place, really. You've probably been saved, actually. I don't know. That was English flippancy, wasn't it, John? Might be.
That's cool.
Might be an element of truth there. I'll get into the holiday spirit, and I, John.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an intriguing question too. I just thought of this too. You were working at Pods, What made you decide to like strike out on your own and do your own thing as an entrepreneur?
Right.
I think that's what I always wanted to do. Pods was an amazing accident in terms of I needed a job, and I was like on jobs.wordpress.net replying to things and like, finding like $400 bad web development jobs. No, because nobody had told me. Like, this is before I got involved with the community. Everybody was like, "Don't do the $400 jobs, Josh." Right? And but anyway, I answered a thing that was like plugin needs support. And like for whatever bizarre reason, Scott decided to give me a job. And that was this amazing opportunity to, not just learn pods and then go from support to doing development there, but also just learn and also just get a ton of freelance work that was of decent pay because I knew pods. But also learn from Scott and Phil, the other developer there, what it takes to manage a large project, right? Like plugin development is so different than, say, making a website. You're like, we're launching at this date, and that may or may not be it. Whereas what I love about plugins is that they're never finished. Like I tell this that when I do a Caldera Forms release, we merge the development branch to master, do all the stuff to push to WordPress.org, and then the last step of that process is I have to branch back to the development branch and then change the version number to whatever version beta 1. And that's my favorite part of the release process, because that means like I get to keep going. Like that's done, cool. People get an update and bugs are fixed. They have new features, but my favorite part is the fact that I get to start the next version. Like that's the part where it gives me the joy of like, hey, I finished version 1.4.5. It's boring to me. I get to start version 1.4.6. It's exciting to me. And that's what I learned there was like how to manage these long-term projects and to find the joy in something that never ends.
I think that's fantastic, Josh. But why forms? What was there? What was the business logic, if there was any? And I'm not being flippant there because in truth, there's a lot. I've gone down a certain road with a certain product, and thinking back, there wasn't a lot of the initial logic. It's come along, but why forms and on the business side, what was the logic behind forms?
I just read in a Facebook discussion somewhere, like literally while I was making coffee, somebody saying, Google does that, but I think I can do better, and I'm going to build something like that. Whatever Google thing that was, the 9,000 things. And for a second, there's that like insanity of like, you're like a dude who is, you're going to try and make something that Google's already doing, but you think you can do one of the things that does better for WordPress, right? But that's great because Google does a lot of things very well, but they can't nail it on all the time, or Amazon or whatever big company. And also, I mean, the history of innovation, and especially online, it comes from small groups of people who are able to use the fact that they're new and that they're not in some huge structure to do something better than some existing product, some existing large company couldn't do. So I think that's, to me, how I like to answer the question of, like, hey, I have this idea for something, but it's already been done. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but if there are a ton of people who need it, I think this person was talking about some sort of server thing. And there's an infinite need for servers, right? There are 10 billion hosting companies because there's so many people who need hosting. And for us, we know that every website needs a form, and there are hundreds of thousands of new websites every week. And so if I don't know what it is, if it's 200,000 or 500,000 new websites a week, divide that by 4. You've got how many of those are going on WordPress, roughly. They all need a form. So when you look at something with a huge market, it doesn't matter that there are other people out there. Yeah. I don't really care if hey, people love gravity forms, and that's fine. That's good. We do something very different. The good thing about WordPress is that there is a ton of options, and people excited to try new things. And I like when people try us out because a lot of people like us. They think like, oh, this is very different. This is new. Oh, let me try this. And that's great. So for us, it was to actually give you an answer. We didn't originally think that's what the company was about. It sort of took over the company in terms of that was what was most resonant. We tried a lot of different products. And I think early on being like, this is the thing I do. Like people say, have focus, do one thing. And they're right. But don't get to that too soon, right? We discontinued our most successful selling product because it didn't make sense to the brand. It wasn't a good thing to support. It was hard, it was expensive to develop. We thought we would be about search products. Our Easy Pods, Easy Queries, which are search plugins, they do well. They're not what defines us. We did a lot of things, including this form builder that we had, and that was the one that people went, man, we love that. So we really like, why forms? Because of all the things we built, that's the one that tens of thousands of people used.
Right, makes total sense.
So how important is it to have a product story? How important is storytelling in product marketing?
Huge. Everything's about storage, right? So just to back up into my origin story, I started blogging about being a nerd because I was in school for environmental studies and at a very hippie college. And part of that curriculum is like, explore yourself and your relationship to your world and to your history, right? Like, as you can imagine, it's sort of standard curriculum. And so for me, that was, let's write about being a nerd, right? Let's get in touch with that inner nerd that's always been a part of me that I maybe tried to push away. And so that led to a lot of like research on what is a story and why is this fundamental to being human. Actually, I have a WordCamp talk on WordPress TV about storytelling and how this isn't a thing that defines us as humans. This is a thing that made us human, right? The original stories were about where prey was going to, right? If you could think about where a rabbit was going to be, we developed these skills right around the same time that we got better at throwing things, right? We developed these sort of like complex thoughts around the same time that we evolved like better arm muscles to throw things. So that's sort of like stories that we were telling about, like, hey, that rabbit's is here now, but I bet you it's going to be there, right? You can see the evolutionary advantage of being able to tell that type of story. These are things that are essential to us as humans. So you have to have a story. And I think that that's something that can be tricky with a product. And one of the things that we're really focused on right now is having more personality. I think one of the mistakes that slowed us down as a growth of a company was being like pseudo-corporate, if you know what I mean, in our messaging. Like having a joshpress.net that was very Josh and very, and the team is larger than me, but like I tend to be the one associated with it. But joshpress.net and at josh412 Twitter, follow me on Twitter, little box pops up, was very, I feel like I talk very authentically like me on my personal blog and on social media. And with some notable exceptions, people like me. The corporate site, the like website for the brand had no story, had no sort of personality. And that's something that we've been looking to change, right? To own the fact that we did a whole Taco Tuesday promotion instead of Cyber Monday, we did Taco Tuesday. And then we threw a taco party the night before WordCamp US, right? We invited users over for tacos. We had a taco bar. By the way, it's surprisingly affordable to have Moe's Southwestern Grill show up at your Airbnb with instead of a taco bar. I had no idea. And we made goofy taco stickers, and we, just sort of embraced the nature of who we are. And I think that's huge, is to tell that story about your product and to tell stories of your users using the product and why your users will become more successful when they use their product. To have a mascot. We're working towards having a mascot because I look at the power of WAPU in the WordPress community and how people, when I go to WordCamps, people who are new figure out WAPU in like 4 hours tops, right? They're on board. I don't mean like figure out what the hell it is. I mean, get the whole thing, wear the sticker, want the like Wapoo doll that people have. You know what I mean? Like it brings people into the community so fast, and I think that's essential for a product to have.
I think that's fantastic. Just to follow through on John's question, but what I've learned is you got to really understand who your client, who's going to buy this, who's going to use it, who's your target. You know, do you think you've really cleared now, because it's not always easy initially, who are your kind of, obviously there is an average, but who are the people that are using it? Is it other developers? Is it DIY people? Or who's exactly using your form product?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really hard. It's partially because WordPress.org creates an anti-pattern towards customer understanding, right? That the WordPress, and not just in terms of rules that are wrong. That's not the first time I've said that. Like, I think that the rules governing how you interact with your users are just wrong and are hurting our community and our products. But also creates this best practice and this expectation that people don't, that makes people even more restrictive to that kind of thing. So that makes it hard to understand who your users are. Also, just because they're so diverse, right? If you're doing, a very like a specialized, like look at Give, it's a super successful plugin, and we talk with those folks a lot. They're great people. And they have like very specific use cases, right? There's not even like an e-commerce plugin, It's like people who are fundraising for something personal, people who are fundraising for their church, people who are fundraising for their political organization, people for charity, right? And you would slot people, if you're doing a plugin like that, a lot simpler than a plugin that's designed to kind of do everything, like what we're doing, right? Like some people are using it as a contact form, some people are using it as a one-page e-commerce form. Some people are using it for some sort of complex registration form. Some people are using it for surveys. I was talking with somebody recently who had a dermatologist office, I think, maybe, and they wanted a quick way to, they weren't like selling anything through it, but they built this like internal application where they had post types for all the different tests that they could order. And right, but then there's like a diagnostic code, and there's a there's a price, and then there's a link to where they order it on whatever. And so they had those all in custom fields, and they used our form to like do a quick search to find that stuff and show that results, and then print out some form that then I don't know, right? It's so hard. Like how do we segment users by our doctors' offices organizing their right? So that's really hard, and so you have to find something unifying. In that, you have to find a unifying thread when you're doing something general. It's very different than if you're selling a thing specifically targeted at restaurants that want to make it easier for people to order online, right? If that's your goal, right? If that's your mission statement, we want to make it easier for people to order online from restaurants, right? You know who your users are. And that's, I think, the value of a mission statement is to say, like, for us, we want to make it easier for people to have accessible websites that they can use to interact with who wants to talk to them. That's the mission statement for Caldera Forms, and that's what it is. But it doesn't get to that like very connected thing, like if we're doing online restaurant ordering.
No, definitely.
I was just to say, I think that's the value of segmentation. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think there's a lot to that. Just looking at how Caldera Forms stacks up against some of the other, forms that are out there. Gravity Forms seems like it's more centered toward developers, but Caldera Forms, I mean, just from my observation, it seems in a lot of ways like more user friendly, for sure. Having the drag and drop and being responsive out of the box. There's so many things that like differentiate that product from some of the other ones. So did you know, just right off the bat, how you wanted to be different from all the different forms out there, from Contact Form 7 and all those different other ones?
So here's the thing. I didn't have a ton of experience with WordPress form builders when I got started with it. Right, I got started as a user, actually. Caldera Forms was originally developed by David Kramer, and who I met working on pods. And he was doing some work for, volunteer work for pods. He was a pods user, said, hey, that part right there isn't great. Let's make that better. That's, the awesome thing about open source is people who use a tool, and instead of complaining about the part of it that's quantifiably wrong, they fix it, right? And I really loved the way that he built interfaces. And I said, I want to learn to build interfaces like that. I want to use this. The first thing that we did together was an add-on that allowed me to use Caldera Forms in a project that I was using before, that I needed a interface layer, right? I had all the back-end stuff done, which is sort of what I've always been better at. And I had this really terrible form working for the interface. That like 98% worked, but was just God's awful. And so I wanted to use Caldera Forms because I said, hey, I could make a form that looks like I want in 5-10 minutes and functions so much better than what I've spent the last week on. And I just need a little bit of work to hook it up to my system. And that's why the run action add-on exists. That's one that just takes your data and fires it off as an action. So you can just have all that data if you're a developer. Just do whatever you want with it. Hook in and grab it. And that's what I needed. And so that was from the get-go, was that I wanted all of our products to have an interface that I would want to use. I think that WordPress in many ways is showing its age, right? I mean, this is Matt Mullenweg's push to modernize the WordPress dashboard, the WordPress admin screen, all these things, because it's old. It's a really old way of building interfaces, and it doesn't feel great these days a lot of the time. I can't agree more with him when he's like, it's going to be painful. And I personally don't like React.js, but he's right. It's going to be this process is necessary. And I saw, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I first started seeing this stuff. I said, this is how I want to do things. And that was kind of always my motivation, was not, oh, this form builder sucks and I'm going to do my own thing. It was just in general that I thought that WordPress had this very backwards, and it's come a long way since then, approach to UI. And I wanted a modern approach that I was seeing in the rest of the web. And that's what attracted me to Caldera Forms when I first started working on it, was that it had, it didn't feel behind. And that's just kind of, I don't want WordPress. I feel this way a lot of times, to be honest. When I use WordPress, that I feel like I'm using 2010's internet. I'm using 2008's internet sometimes. And a lot of things, like, did you use the new version of Yoast? Their user interface is great. What they've done without breaking the look of WordPress, but just functionally, if you compare what Yoast was at 2 years ago to what they are today, it's great. But some of the things, I feel like I'm using 5 years ago's internet, and I wanted to stop putting users through that. I wanted to give users an opportunity to feel like they're using a modern web application when they're using WordPress.
Oh, I think that's great. Shall we go for our break, John, and come back in a second?
Definitely. We're going to head to our break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Josh Pollock of Caldera Labs. See you in a minute. We're coming back from our break. We're talking with Josh Pollock of Caldera Labs. One of the things that you were just talking about was, at the State of the Word, Matt Mullenweg, is making a big push to improve the admin interface of WordPress. And you were saying that a lot of times it feels like you're using 2010s internet when you're using WordPress. And Calypso is a big part of moving toward that. And that's built on React. How important is it to learn like these different JavaScript frameworks, going forward? And if you had a choice, do you prefer Angular or React? And how is Angular and React compare in a logical sense to web development?
So I actually was thinking a lot about this in the last few days. There's some discussion going on about exactly what will be Where Can't Miami's Learn JavaScript Deeply track this year. And so I was in some discussions about that. And I feel like that discussion goes immediately to React, or what we should use instead of React, because React is insane. In my opinion, as somebody who does, right? And that misses the point, I think, that if you are not used to doing modern front-end web development, learning React is a terrible thing to do. Where even if you want to use React, right? There are a lot of people who love React. You need to learn ES6. You need to get way better at JavaScript than most people who are just sort of, doing some jQuery are doing. You need to learn all the build tools. You need to learn Redux. You need to learn JSX, right? And then you can learn React, right? And those are all great skills. Those are all actual fundamental skills that transfer across domains. Just learning React might be a useful thing to put in your toolkit, but I think that it's more important to, before any framework, to learn the actual language. And I think that we've equated learn JavaScript deeply with learn React or learn some other framework. And the cool thing about frameworks is that when done, a lot of them allow you to write really cool stuff without actually learning a lot about JavaScript. And that's awesome. But those aren't transferable like cross-domain skills. For example, I rebuilt a large section of Caldera Forms last night in Vue.js. And I've never written anything in Vue.js before. And the fact that simple frameworks like Vue.js or Angular 1 are really great, fast ways to build interfaces without really knowing JavaScript very well. Not like, oh, hey, I know Hello World, I'm going to start using Vue.js. But if you're a okay JavaScript developer, you should be able to use ng1 or Vue.js to build something very quickly. And I think that's really great. And I just would caution people into thinking that it's all about choosing a framework. I think that it's really about those fundamentals and understanding what an object is and how that works before you get into all this stuff, and understanding, especially for people coming from PHP, to understand how just totally different object-oriented code is in JavaScript. And then understand the conventions of ES6, if you want to go that route. And then, then maybe you want to, if you're going to build a complex application, maybe it's worth doing something large like ng2 or React. I don't know. I'm not a front-end developer. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Close enough, yeah, definitely.
I feel like maybe a shorter answer would be, yeah, I guess, because Calypso's awesome, right? Like at the end of that, Calypso is really cool. And the WordPress post editor is not a great place to write. I write in Google Docs most of the time. But I would consider writing in Calypso. I would consider writing in Medium's editor. Calypso, I would love to see Calypso for WordPress. I think that would be really great. And I think that it's going to be terribly painful to migrate to Calypso or something like Calypso, but I think it's necessary.
Definitely. And that brings another thing too. You have a REST API ebook. The REST API in this latest version of WordPress, we finally got endpoints Um, do you think that this is going to open up WordPress by bringing other developers who before would have been, nah, I don't want to work on WordPress. That's just for blogging. But now it's going to attract talent from other corners of the web.
I mean, maybe. I think that one of the promises of the REST API that we haven't seen a ton of fulfillment on, we've seen it on big enterprise sites that are doing WordPress as the database management and then some sort of decoupled application using React or whatever as the front end. And that we've seen on big enterprise sites. And I think that the tooling for that is slowly becoming available in having all the options, right? Like one of the reasons why WordPress is so great is because we have these small budget projects where, on a $5,000 project, you can't write everything from scratch. You just don't have time to write a custom e-commerce solution, right? But that doesn't matter because you have 50 good e-commerce plugins to choose from, right? And so the problem is you're like, oh, I'm going to build this with the REST API. Well, most of them aren't going to work with the REST API. And so now, right, that's out the window. So I think that we'll slowly get there where people are saying like, hey, I'm going to hire a killer React developer that can build this beautiful front end. And my customer is going to manage it all in WordPress, and they're just going to use the module for WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads or Cart66 or whatever, right? There's a React module, for that. And I think once we get there, we'll really see that, and that'll be really exciting. I also think that it speaks to the nature of people get excited about using WordPress when they don't have to use WordPress templates. And I would really like to see, if I was a design person and I wasn't, silly busy, my goal right now would be to do what StudioPress did with Genesis, but for REST API. No, I don't even want to call it a theme, right? A thing like a theme, the thing that makes themes obsolete because it uses the REST API and Angular or whatever, and it's just so much cooler. But has a complete, and I'm not just using StudioPress and Genesis as the example because you buy that package and you get all those really good looking child themes, but because there's a whole infrastructure around them, right? There's an infrastructure of training and an infrastructure of all these different plugins that work specifically for Genesis to do useful things, and a community of Genesis developers, right? And then also what they do with like Copyblogger that teaches you how to be successful in terms of different types of website businesses and make your websites successful. Many of the recommendations happen to be StudioPress products, right?
Sure.
It's genius. But what it does is it creates that complete package that convinces people that this is a good way of doing it, of making a website, and also like delivers on that promise, right? That's legitimately a good way of building a WordPress site. And I think that having that kind of complete end-to-end solution that isn't that hard to get started with, and people can do those relatively inexpensive projects and make them look really good and function really well, that for whatever REST API plus whatever, I think that's somebody's going to do that, and they're really going to advance the state of user interface on the web. And that's amazing, and they're going to make a lot of money, and I hope that they don't go backwards on accessibility in the process.
I think what you were saying about Genesis, but I think it's fantastic. Let's put it this way. Thesis got a lot of grief for seeming to go too far about breaking open source requirements, and also attacked where it was seen to modify the core, what was seen as being WordPress. Can you say the same things about Genesis? Where's the balance? Or when, if you go so far, you end up with a product that's not really based on WordPress. It's been it's gone down a path that's so differential that it no longer has much linkage to normal WordPress, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but what's the end result? I mean, in terms of, I've never used Thesis, and I've never read it. And I think that Genesis is very much, which I have some experience with. I don't really make websites that much, so but I have to work on projects with Genesis, and I think it's nice. And the end results are always really, really, you know, a talented developer, somebody with a good eye can make something really great with Genesis, I think that the end results are good, and I think that it shows the power. You could say the same thing, like Divi. People make really beautiful sites with Divi, and then people get mad because it looks so much like the interface becomes its own Divi interface versus WordPress. Well, yeah, but people like it. There's a reason why they sell so much Divi. It's because people like working with that interface. I do too. I use Divi as a prototyping tool a lot, I use Divi to because I can't go into Photoshop and make a layout, right? My two prototyping tools are drawing something on a napkin that nobody can figure out, and going into Divi and making a rough approximation in 5-10 minutes. That's amazing to me. That kind of power. People like these things, and I don't think that end users care or should care about, is it pure WordPress, right? They want it to be fun to work with. They want it to be easy to work with, and they want it to be have a good result. And those are there's nothing wrong with that. Those are good things for people to want, good things to deliver on. And if the next big thing in WordPress will require a change in paradigms. It will require changing the way that people approach WordPress. And that's not a bad thing. If we're going to stick to that, this is the way WordPress is, then forget about it, right? It's a 13-year-old product.
Yeah,
it can't stay the same.
I can see exactly where you're coming from, but my only comment on that is that a lot of people think there's too many ways of doing the same thing in WordPress already.
Oh yeah.
Now you're going to add a system where different developers, productors, whatever title you want to give them, are going to be able to build on multiple different versions of whatever is WordPress. So it'll get even more confusing.
It will, but if there are going to be 100 million WordPress sites, which there basically are, there isn't a solution for all of them. No. There isn't. I don't think that. I really believe that the mission of WordPress core should be providing the tools to make things happen, if that makes sense. I don't think so. They're right. I think that WordPress core does things like a custom post. It provides infrastructure for custom post types, right? There were before custom post types, there were lots of ways of doing what custom post types do. And WordPress core provided a standard way of providing that container, right, for content that isn't a post. WordPress core should do things like a REST API interface. WordPress core should do things like an extensible editor, right? Like a customizer, these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, WordPress core can't. I know it's the goal is 80-20, but I feel like that's probably not even true on the 20% that it can't, right? It's probably larger than that. And it just can't, right? Even if it is 80-20, it's still 20 million people websites that you're failing. And that's fine. The more that you provide tooling and the more that the more options that there are out there, the merrier. And I think that as WordPress grows, it has to be like almost mutatable, if that's the right word, right? It has to be this thing that you turn it on and you go, okay, no, get rid of that, give me this version of this, right? And WordPress core needs to be very good at reacting to being changed.
Yeah,
and that's something that it is why there's so much WordPress, because it is that. And it can do better at that. I think that's the mission.
I can see exactly where you're coming. I think what you're talking about is modules, You know, exactly what plugins. You know, one of the things that built WordPress was, you know, the ability to build plugins reasonably easily, and how you could really customize WordPress through being able to do different things through plugins. So its history, to some extent, comes from that, doesn't it?
Yes. And I think that we almost are at a point where we need something on a lower level, a different level than plugins, right? I think that, right, we have theme and plugin here, and then we have core, and I think there needs to be something in between. And we actually have this. They're called dependencies, but they end up getting packaged in plugins, and it gets really weird. And so I think that, and then we have all these different parts of WordPress core that most people don't actually need all of, right? Nobody needs everything that's in there. And so I think that maybe it's like 4 levels. It's core add-ons, and then like modules that are shared between plugins and themes, or core. And I don't 100% know how to do that in a user-friendly way, because I'm Composer's biggest fan, but that's not a consumer-facing feature. Like, when Composer can't resolve a set of dependencies, that's a nightmare. That takes a qualified developer to solve. Like, that can't be part of the, like, oh, you've installed WooCommerce 4.7, this is like, they're doing 3, this is in the future. And, but it has a dependency clash with this, and like Composer.WordPress recommends, right? Like, screw it. Like, they're going to go back to Squarespace at that point, and they're going to be right. So it's a wicked problem, but I think for the ecosystem, it's something that needs to be solved. Figure out what's the equivalent of a Composer package, like a module for WordPress that just kind of, we don't end up in that dependency resolution hell. I know that has been a big issue in the Drupal world, as they've integrated into core, and could be an issue in PHP in general. But I think that's essential to becoming more modular, and also to being able to provide the headless WordPress, an enterprise WordPress solution where you don't get most of it, right? Where you need a system for content management that can send off that content over the REST API, and it's just kind of a little small thing, right? Where you install WordPress in a larger, you're doing a project in Symfony, and you just install these pieces of WordPress right there, and that's all you need. I think that's the future.
Well, Josh, I've really enjoyed the discussion. I think it's been a bit of a nerd fish. I don't know if John agrees, but we love for you to come back on the show in the new year on our round table episode, and have another nerd fest. I've got some business requirements I've got to do, so we're probably not going to have a bonus session, folks. But we're definitely going to have Josh back in the new year, and hopefully he will agree to join us on a round table show, and we have a real nerd fest. What do you think, John?
Definitely. Just want to remind everyone, if you're getting value from this podcast, be sure to go to iTunes, leave us a detailed review. We're trying to get to triple digits. We
5
do
stars.
see the listenership going up. It's definitely going up every month, and we appreciate that.
It's growing rapidly, isn't it, John?
It definitely is. Josh, how do we get a hold of you?
So you can find me wherever you see this logo. we're quickly spreading it across the internet. Right? It's the Caldera globe, where the whole globe's going to look like this, like the whole Earth. So you can find me at calderaforms.com. Is the website for Caldera Forms. Or joshpress.net is my own site that I occasionally blog at. I run my mouth on Twitter all day at Josh412. And you'll know when I'm on vacation or dead by I stop tweeting. But yeah, so you can check us out at calderaforms.com, or follow me on Twitter at Josh412, or at CalderaWP on Twitter as well.
Excellent. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Oh, it's quite easy, folks. You can get me on Twitter, Jonathan Denwood. I kind of jump on every kind of second day. Or you can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com, and I'll probably get you back the next day. They're the two best ways. How can people get hold of you, John?
Well, you can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com, or you can follow me on Twitter, lockdown_, if you dare.
What do you mean if you dare? I like following you. You share my stuff. That's an excellent use for Twitter.
No, yeah, well, that's cool. That's cool. So the next 2 episodes we're going to do, they're going to be internal shows, probably just going to be me and Jonathan, but just want to let everybody know in 2017, we're already like lining up some really big guests. We've got some surprises for you. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet, but we've got some shows we think you're really going to enjoy coming up pretty soon here. So for the WP-Tonic, for our guest Josh, for Jonathan, is saying adios.
Bye, folks.